You're listening to Crystal and Emily on Love Your Shelf, the best librarian podcast in the extensive and highly competitive field of librarian podcasts.
Oh, hello.
Well, hello there. Are you ready for today's podcast?
I think I am.
Okay. Gonna have to be brave.
Yeah, I was going to say the question is, are you guys ready for today's podcast?
So I think we will wrap up with our book recommendations, but start with doing something a little bit different. What do you think about that?
I mean, you know I'm on board.
Okay, good. So all of this that I want to talk about today kind of came out of the last, we've been reading a lot of, or I have been reading and watching, and I think you too, like things that are a little bit spooky or weird or uncanny.
Yeah.
And so it all just kind of, I don't know, came naturally out of the stuff that we've been consuming lately. So I thought, well, let's talk about that. So
yes. We love a story without an explanation.
Yes. That's really, I think, the best way to describe it, right?
Yes.
Where you just leave it open and get the chills and then don't, think about it too much.
Yeah, no, don't research anything. Yeah, just stay scared.
Yes. And so there were a couple of coincidences, which is kind of what led me here. So yesterday I was showed you a funny video, and then last night I was listening to the Morbid podcast, which I like, but it's not, I don't listen to them all the time. They're pretty prolific. The one I listened to is episode 201. And sometimes they're better than others. But in this particular one, they had a special guest whose name is Ghost Honey. And I was like, well, that's a familiar name, but why is that? It turns out he's also the guy who made the funny video that I showed you. And so
you're a fan, officially.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Yeah. He's hilarious, but also spooky, apparently. So
I love that combination, truly.
Yes, yeah. I aspire to be that.
Me too. I was going to say, I think the best people are funny and spooky at the same time.
Yeah. I'm working on my spookiness. I wore all black today.
Yep. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I got to work harder on it though. I laugh too much, I think.
Oh man, I smile way too much to be spooky, but
yeah. But with the masks, it covers up the smiling. So
that's right.
Now is our chance.
Yep.
Anyway,
lots of glaring, lots of eye action.
Yeah. Don't smize.
That's right.
Yeah. So then in that podcast, there's another coincidence because they were talking about a phenomenon that I am not familiar with, but I feel like we should be because it seems like it was so prevalent. Black-eyed children as being like this spooky thing that happens to people. They encounter these black-eyed children, which I really hope that that's the end of the coincidence chain, because if I see black-eyed children, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah, no. I mean, why do they got to be black eyes? Like,
yeah, exactly.
They're just
red eyes would be scary, but not as scary as, I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they're talking about this phenomenon and like interviewing people or talking about other people's experiences where they've encountered this phenomenon. I don't know much about that, but it's funny because we were talking about this game, a computer game that I played in college called The Darkest Eye. And you even remarked, because I showed you some images from the game, and that's what all the characters in it have, like, sort of black holes for eyes, and it's really creepy. And that game is based on all of the stories of Edgar Allan Poe, and I was really lamenting the fact that you can't play that game anymore because it was a computer game that's compatible with Windows 95.
Yeah, that's what it said on the inside. So if anyone has a Windows 95 hanging out that works, let Crystal know.
Yes, I want to play this game. I'll let you play it too if you share. But yeah. Anyway, so just some funny things. So it started me thinking about, as I was listening to this podcast, other spooky stuff. And I know that you also like spooky stuff or unexplained things and mysteries and stuff. And so I thought we would kind of share some of our favorite ones, whether it's from our personal experiences or things that we've read or seen that we thought were really creepy. And so in the podcast, I'll tell you like one of the stories that they were telling about these black-eyed children, because I thankfully have never run across any myself.
Call in if you've ever come across a black-eyed child.
Yes. We're not taking it off your hands, but
right. Yeah. We just want to know about it.
Yeah. And so this person they were talking about this episode was in 1997 in Abilene. So, you know,
it's
in Texas.
I have family near Abilene.
Give him a warning about this.
Right.
And so this is like back in the 90s. So he was actually going to pay his cable bill at the store with a check. And so he goes, and these boys come up to him and ask him for help. And he says he felt an overwhelming sense of dread immediately.
Run away.
Yeah. And I guess this cable place was near a movie theater or something.
Okay.
And so he says that, you know, he like is sort of now checking out these kids, and the taller one was smiling. He says he has extra white teeth. That's a weird detail. But anyway. And so these two boys ask the guy to give them a ride home so that they can get money for the movie. And so he's like, well, why didn't they just ask for the money? You know, why do they want to get in my car? Apparently, this is the thing with these black-eyed children, is that they try to take you to a second location.
Never go with anyone to a second location unless you know them.
Exactly.
And even then, you should be cautious.
Yeah, even then, I was going to say, not even with me, because you never know what my intentions are.
Right.
I could need your help moving or something. Just don't do it.
No. That sense of dread you were talking about.
Yeah, you can tell. Oh, you want me to use my pickup truck or something.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, okay.
So he's, you know, telling him, no, I don't think so. You know, I'm like trying to get away, but you know, he's not overreacting at this time. But then the tall boy starts to get mad, and he's like, you know, why won't you help us? And they start saying, well, you know, just tell us that we can get in your car. We need to be invited to get in your car.
So it's like a vampire situation?
I guess so. So he looks at the boys again, and then they have black eyes.
No.
And so the biggest one starts trying to push his way in, and saying like, we don't even have a gun. Why won't you let us in? Anyway,
look in the mirror. That's why.
Let me take a picture of you real quick and show you.
Why.
Except this was 1997, so nobody had cell phones.
Let me take a picture with my camera. Go
down the street. Have it.
I don't even remember the word. Developed. There we go.
Yeah, and so in a week, I'm going to show you how spooky you are.
That's right. Wow.
So anyway, so that just kind of. I wasn't super spooked by that story, but it started making me think of other things, you know. So we had talked before about that we both listened to the podcast series Radio Rental.
Yes.
And they have some excellent spine tingling stories.
Gracious, yes.
Now, not every one of them is great, but most of them are really, really good.
And there were some that were just, I mean, again, all of these are, we don't know the answer. We don't know if these people are just amazing actors and con men. I mean, we don't know.
Yeah.
But some of them were like, okay, stop. This is so silly. Stop talking. But some of them were stories that I've repeated to most people that I know.
Yeah, because they're just so off the wall.
Oh my! In fact, when you asked me about scary stories, I think like the first three I thought about were all radio rental stories. So I was like, man, I don't know about that. I don't know if I should just retell the radio rental podcast to everyone.
Yeah. That, that would be a whole mood. Like, I'm going to repeat it back to you in my own words.
And yeah, not
The
well.
exact story. Yeah.
Anyway, we love radio rental.
Yes. So there was one time we lived out in the woods in the country. And so in the back of the house, it was like a clearing and then woods.
Mm-hmm.
And it was dark. And I, wasn't like a jumpy kid or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably, I don't know, at least 14, 15. And sitting at the dining table, like doing homework. And so it was dark outside and light inside. So you couldn't see out. And had the window open and it was just the screen,
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sitting there and I hear something out in the backyard and I kind of pause and listen. And it sounds like footsteps walking toward the back of the house.
Oh.
And so, we had lots of every kind of critter you can think of, from raccoons and deer to, we even saw bobcats sometimes, we just all kinds of animals out there. And, but it sounded like 2 feet.
Yeah.
Walking
there's something about a human.
It gets closer.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's getting closer. So I'm trying to be cool. I'm not going to jump up and run, but I like kind of say, hey, Dad, he's in the other room.
Mm-hmm.
And the footsteps start running toward the house.
Toward the house?
Toward the window. Yeah. So then I did jump up and I went and like by the time I jumped up and left the room, it sounded like they were right outside the window.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go tell my dad, and thankfully my dad is not one of those who's like, oh, you're being hysterical,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna go follow up on it.
Yes.
So he's like, okay, I'm gonna go take a look. So he goes out there, he hears footsteps too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so of course he, we're in the country, he picks up his gun and he goes out into the woods. And then he says he could hear him crashing around because once you get into the woods, it's lots of brush and undergrowth, So you can hear that there's somebody out there. And so he even like went and he comes back in. He's like, there's somebody out there. I could tell that they were going off this direction. So he's like trying to get the car headlights to shine back there. And, but then he leaves me in the house and he gives me his pistol. And he's like, okay, because, my mom and my siblings were there, but I think at that point I was the only one who could shoot. So he's like, here, protect the family while I go and try to provoke this person who's out in the woods.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, he said, ultimately he came back. We never captured anybody or anything. Not that I would say on this podcast. But he, he said that he'd tracked him and followed him out there, and they it sounded like because we had all the back of our property was on a lake, and the other side of the lake, well, one side was ours, the other side was like this fish and game place. And so it sounded like they got into a boat and went back across the lake.
Wow.
Yeah.
But what was that about?
I know. It was, but I will never forget that sound of like, okay, I'm trying not to be scared, but then
but I can't.
Then it starts running toward the house.
Right. I can't ignore or even try to convince myself that this is something else anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh gosh.
Like I'm not going to be stupid and sit here while whatever's happening goes through the window. Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely the worst. I mean, even if I hear like a squirrel in the leaves outside my window, I'm like, okay, is it a footstep? Is it a human? Okay. Nope. Just some rustling.
Nope,
We're
just
good.
a squirrel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I've lived by myself mostly, and I think especially early on, it can be unnerving because, you're, you do have to be cautious and, you've spent your whole life hearing all these stories. And
yes. And now you've got to be prepared.
Yeah. So we decided just to share them all with you so that you can all be stressed out and afraid of every sound that you hear too.
Hope y'all don't live alone.
But so the whole window thing actually made me think of other stories, which maybe that's why I was, chicken about the windows. But my mom told me a story when she was a little girl, there had been some guy that was like a peeping Tom going around the neighborhood.
Ugh.
And the thing was with her, she didn't hear anything. She wasn't suspecting anything. She just was in her room and went to her window and opened the blinds, and there was a man standing there.
Oh, no. No.
Right. And exactly. I mean, that just gives you the chills, right? Like
Yes, it's
shock.
I mean, I just think it's what maybe a lot of people, at least me, I picture when I'm in that really afraid mindset where I can't, I don't know. I just think that when I'm on my way to creeping myself out, that's the image that I have is some guy staring at me through the window.
Yeah.
And just for that to actually happen, I can't imagine.
Well, and so my great grandmother, who was a storyteller and who also loved spooky stuff, she was always telling us stuff that we'd go home and tell our mom. She's like, "Why is she telling you guys this?" And but she just was like, she was just a natural storyteller. But she said that she was a little girl, and maybe this is just gonna be passed down through the females in my family line. I don't know, but she's a little girl. She wakes up in her room and looks out the window, and there's a man standing there. And so she bolts upright and yells for her mother. She's, "Mama, mama," And instead of alarming this guy, instead he like cruelly mocks her and says, "Mama, mama."
No! Oh my God. Okay, so now I'm mad at this guy too.
Yeah. And so of course she
so
bolts
creepy.
out of the room. But yeah, that also stuck with me as being like, what kind of monster, would do something like that? Or even if it was a dream, even if it didn't happen, that's still such a terrifying thing.
And because it tells you that this person has a plan or is experienced. You know what I mean? Like if they're not scared of, I just think somebody who is like, I'm just going to try this for the first time. They're going to, as soon as someone sees them or yells for an adult. Yeah. No. No.
No.
I'm going to say that a lot this episode.
So anyway, so that was my window stories. But then you brought up that radio rental also had a really creepy window.
And I'll make it really short, but the gist of it was that I know a girl, she was in bed. There was somebody tapping on her window and she thought it was her boyfriend or something and just kind of ignored it and then kept tapping. She gets up and opens the blinds and what do you know? There's a man there that she does not know. And the part that was so scary listening to it, and you agreed with me, was the way she told it was she said that the man I think he kind of gestured at her to like come closer. And then he said, "Can I talk to you?" or "Can I talk to you for a minute?" or something like that. But she whispered it and gross.
Yeah.
So yes. Anyway, so she was like, absolutely not. You cannot talk to me. And I don't remember what happened. Basically, I think she called somebody and he ran off kind of thing. But a few days later, this serial killer in her city had been arrested and she recognized him. It was the guy that had been at her window.
Ugh.
And oh my gosh, can you imagine?
I don't know if I would. I mean, I'm an insomniac anyway. I don't know if I would ever go to sleep again. Or I would probably go crazy and board up all my windows or something.
Yes, absolutely not. I mean, I just think she obviously handled it beautifully. And, she immediately was like, "Who are you? Get away. You cannot talk to me." But there are obviously people out there that wouldn't say that. That would be like, sure.
Yeah, like, okay, what is it?
Because he was a successful serial killer. So, I don't know.
Just apparently worked before. Yeah.
Yeah. And I kind of felt like she just, I don't know, kind of walked away from the situation a little creeped out, but was really kind of casual about telling the story. And it wasn't until she realized who it was that she was creeped out.
Yeah.
Anyway, super unsettling.
Very much. Yes.
Ugh. Well, and that actually just made me think of, and this isn't that scary, but it is a moment that I always remember and just sort of wonder, did I get away from something? I was maybe 4 or 5, and I was playing like at the end of our driveway, and it was a big driveway and had like a big wide opening. So it's not like I was like in the street, and we lived right off of a little bumpy back road. And so it wasn't like there was a ton of traffic anyway. But this man in a pickup truck drives up and just stops in front of where I'm playing, and I didn't know him. And he started talking to me and kind of being like, "How are you today? And what's going on?" And I I had been watching Barney, and I remember on Barney they said that if a stranger tries to talk to you, you stop, you turn around, and you walk away. And I did that. I remember
good for you and good for Barney.
I stood my ground, and I felt like I put my nose in the air a little bit and turned around and walked away. And I think back to that all the time now, and just that guy had no business talking to me. Yeah. So thanks, Barney.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, that's definitely stranger danger is a good thing to teach kids.
Yep.
Maybe don't tell them all of the scary stories that my family like to share, but and then turn you into, total basket case by the time
you're scared forever. Yeah.
But do tell them to stay away from strangers.
That's right.
Well, actually, I have another window story.
Yes, I was about to say, I think there was another one.
Yeah. Well, this is a little different. I don't know if I've mentioned it to you, but I was in college and I lived in Coffin Hall, which
yikes,
that's funny.
Come on.
Yeah. And incidentally, it was torn down the year after I lived there, but
only vampires lived there.
Yes, exactly. I was briefly one of them, but we'll move on from that. I was just dabbling. But,
that's right. In vampirism. I don't know.
Yeah. So there was like a common room, of course, and then a computer lab that had like like 3 computers, and like a unisex bathroom, kind of just like it was very minimal. And so we're in the common area, like watching a movie or something, and I go into across the hall through the computer lab to go to the restroom, and in there the window had been broken and there was blood everywhere. Yeah. And so I, it was one of those where you just kind of stand there for a second and go, okay,
what do I do with this?
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's also blood. Okay. So that's another thing to note.
Yeah.
And then, I didn't run screaming or anything, but I was just like, I think I'm going to go tell my friends. This is
right.
And it actually, it turned out it was not an exciting story, but that was another one of those moments where it's just that could have gone many different directions.
Exactly. And I am someone who would not jump to one of those simple logical conclusions. I would immediately be like, I don't even know, some bloody ghost man broke into my dorm.
Yeah, and it wasn't like a huge mega dorm. It was only 2 stories, and I knew almost all the people that were there were in the other room with me, so it wasn't
oh no,
it was, and I knew there wasn't any of them, and so it was like, okay, is this person who has broken the window and apparently cut themselves, are they still in the building?
Right.
Or did that deter them enough?
Never mind, you know what? I was going to terrorize these teenagers, but or college students.
Crystal, when you desperately need a teddy bear shaped cake pan to bake a teddy bear shaped cake?
Emily, don't I ever know that feeling? And then I just end up making a plain old boring round cake. It's the worst.
Ugh. Or when you need to sew a dress for the party that requires a teddy bear shaped cake. But you don't have a sewing machine or a pattern, and you don't know how to sew.
Ugh, I hate when that happens.
And of course, we all know what it's like when your bike chain breaks while you're riding your bike to that party. Well, when all three of those scenarios happen to me, I visit the Library of Things here at the Public Library. Our collection now includes non-traditional library items such as cake pans in every shape imaginable, a sewing machine, and a bike repair kit. And we've recently added hotspots and webcams.
And more new things are added all the time. And we even take suggestions if we don't have something that you want. So head on over to your Nacogdoches Public Library for all your not-so-common needs.
Even if you don't need to bake a cake, sew a dress, or fix a bike.
So, as I mentioned, we lived out in the country, and we played outside all the time. Anytime that we weren't in school, especially, during breaks and in the summertime, we were just, not that our parents kicked us out of the house and like, don't be inside, but it was just way more fun and free to be outside the house.
Absolutely.
And we had, like acres and acres to play on. And so that's where we spent our time. And so, and we knew it pretty much like the back of our hand because, we were just always out there. So my sister and I are out one day, and I don't even remember what we were doing, just maybe like going between the two houses, between our house and our grandparents' house. And for whatever reason, I think this is actually a good story to illustrate what we were like as kids, because we saw something strange and we didn't tell any of the adults about it or anything like that. We were just like made up all these stories amongst ourselves.
Well, because it's better that way, right?
Exactly. That's so much more thrilling than to go have your parents explain it away is something that is
you
boring.
Wouldn't be telling this story today if you knew the answer.
Exactly. Much better that we tried to, figure it out ourselves.
Unless there was something spooky going on.
Right. Maybe we would have really discovered something strange, but so we were out walking through, it was like a clearing between stands of trees, and we came across an animal skeleton, which, being in the country, we were not unused to that. That happened a lot.
Sure.
But we usually knew, like, if we had a calf that died, we would know that, for example, where it had been buried, and we would kind of avoid that,
right.
like we weren't
any animal of a, I don't know, certain size is going to be noticeable. I guess. Yeah.
And so we had never seen it there before. It was like the size of a large dog or a calf. I don't remember now. Like, I'm sure we inspected it at the time, but I don't remember anymore what it was.
Okay.
But it was enough that we noticed it. And we also noticed it because it was just sort of laying on top of the grass, and it was pretty high, high grass because it was a hayfield. And the bones were pretty bleached. There wasn't, other
like fur and
things
stuff
hanging on. Yeah. It's pretty just a bleached skeleton. And so, even as little kids, as small as we were like, well, that's weird, because we go through here all the time. If there was a large carcass rotting here for months, we would probably have noticed it.
Yes.
And
in one way or another, you would have noticed it. Whether it's your eyes or your nose is what I'm getting at.
Precisely. Yes. And so, we're like, okay, this is weird. So we, investigated. I don't know. We looked around and couldn't make heads or tails. So our cousin who lived down the way, we went and got her, and we're like, hey, come check this out. Like, we can't figure out why this is here. And so we take her back, and we couldn't find it. And
that's so weird.
And I mean, it was in a particular, it's a lot of acres that were out there, but it was in a particular spot that was, that.
Yeah. I mean,
we took her back to the same spot.
Yeah, no, exactly.
We didn't get confused on that.
Yeah, there were two your land.
Yeah. And there were two of us there. So it wasn't like, one person could maybe, well, I mean, this is what we said to ourselves. We could have missed it, but at the time we were like, no, this is the spot where we were, but there's literally nothing here. And then we never were able to find it.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah. And, so then, of course, we make up stories of the ghost dog roaming or whatever. But there were just little things like that we were always, we would dive right into that. We weren't like scared of it. We were like, ooh, this is titillating.
Yeah. I like to imagine that this ghost dog is just a skeleton dog walking around, and it heard you guys coming and was like, oh crap, like
better lay low.
Played extra dead, I guess.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Totally, nothing insidious about it or anything. It's just living its life, or its afterlife, whatever.
Right.
Wasn't like, these kids are not ready to know about
That's
this
right.
stuff,
I'm just gonna lay here. I like that version of the story.
I'm gonna play dead.
That's right. Oh my gosh. No, that's a great story.
Yeah, it was. We sure enjoyed that kind of thing.
Oh goodness. Well, I have a story, and this is another one that is not mine. I heard it on a different podcast, but it's one that just really chilled me. It's about and again, I don't have the details. I don't know names. This is just my retelling of this story about people I don't know. This girl young woman was in her house, and I guess hanging out in her basement. Like, that was where she hung out, watched TV or whatever. And there was this particular corner or piece of wall in her basement. And I'm not sure what led to this, but basically her cat started acting really weird about that piece of wall. Just being really skittish, wouldn't go near it, tail all bushed up. And so she got weirded out. She didn't know what was going on, but it weirded her out enough that she, took her stuff upstairs and went to bed. And the next thing she knew, she was downstairs, standing nose to wall with that piece of wall. And she said she didn't sleepwalk. That wasn't something she was known to do. I don't know. Ghosts were summoning her or something. I don't know what it is, but and I don't know. That's another one where it's a simple story, not a lot of parts to it, but what does it mean?
That is, no.
Standing right in front of the creepy haunted wall.
Oh man,
I hate it so much.
I don't even know what I would do if that happened to me. Like,
see a doctor? I don't know.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I like my sister sleepwalks, so there have been some weird things that have happened with her, but and I suffer sometimes when I'm under stress. I suffer from sleep paralysis.
Yes.
Which is also, like, when that first started happening to me, especially before, I'd never heard of it before it happened to me. And so I didn't know, like, oh, this is a thing that people go through. I was
you
just like,
thought you were, I'm dying right now. This, yeah.
And so since then, I've seen a documentary about it. I've probably even mentioned it in passing on the podcast. But it is really, like, a terrifying thing. And I'm glad that I was already an adult. I mean, I was in my 20s when I first experienced it. I cannot imagine being a child.
Oh my gosh, right?
It was bad enough as an adult. But although I did, which I'd forgotten about, but as a child, like, as a toddler, I had night terrors, which were really scary for my parents. I don't remember it, but
but
I would just stand up in my crib screaming bloody murder.
Yep.
And like, wide-eyed, but still be asleep. And they were really scared about that.
Yeah. And there's nothing they can do because what's happening is in your head,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if that's connected to eventually having sleep paralysis, but the thing, like, the onset of that for me was I was working on my doctoral dissertation. And I think it was kind of like a perfect storm. So I was all day and all night reading and writing. I was only teaching 2 days a week for like 2 hours at a time. So I was hardly ever seeing any other people. And I was really stressed because I was, writing my dissertation and preparing to take my qualifying exam.
Okay.
Which is like a 2-day long test. It's not even a test. You just write everything that you know for 2 days, basically.
Sounds
it's
terrible.
Really stressful. Yeah. And so when I was doing that, I had the first instance of this. And so I was asleep in bed and woke up, but I couldn't move. And so I, thought, okay, well, I'm just dreaming. But then the thing that like struck me is that in dreams, usually you're in a place that's unrecognizable, or you're like,
sure,
you're in your house, but it doesn't look like your house. People always say that kind of thing.
Some weird, addition
it's
to it.
It's a dream place. Yeah. But I was in my room and I was, like aware
just as it is, your room
exactly as it was.
Yeah.
And so it was, it was just like a bedroom, and I had my desk in there, and then I had a walk-in closet across the room. And so I'm kind of beginning to get a little frustrated by, starting to realize that this is a weird thing.
Yeah.
And that I'm awake, but it's dark. I'm in my room and I can't move. And so then, and this didn't always happen when I had these episodes, but this is how it started. Then I felt like that there was an entity in my closet looking at me.
Oh, no. Why?
Yes.
and it's got to be looking at you too.
Yeah. And so I'm like trying to focus on it to see if I can see anything. It's just like a dark shape. And then it like rushes in an instant and it's right in my face.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so then I'm like really trying to move, at this point.
Oh my gosh.
So that happens and I like try to roll over and I roll, or I think I'm rolling like out of bed,
Yeah.
And I roll and I felt like I was falling, and then it just didn't stop. I just kept feeling like I was falling and falling and falling.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like without stopping. And so then I'm like, okay, well, out of the frying pan into the fire. And so I'm like, okay, I still feel like I'm falling, but I'm trying to rationalize it, And then I have the thought, which is, well, if I'm falling this far, it wasn't out of my bed.
And that I know for sure now. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I hit the ground, or if I if I fall until it stops, then obviously I'm going to be dead.
Yes.
And so that was, and like, I don't remember like what the transition was, but then I woke up.
Well, but neither scenario. Yeah, no, that's not good. And just the fact that you were so awake, and, able to have thoughts.
Oh yeah. I was thinking about it. Yeah.
Problem solve and all of that. Cause I've had moments of that where it's just kind of something weird's happening and I can't wake up. I'm aware of things that are going on, but I can't wake up, but it's a moment, and, I just think that's so scary.
Well, and yeah, so then I started, and this was this is at least 20 years ago, and, or about 20 years ago. And, so I started doing research, and there wasn't a whole lot about it because I didn't have the word for it. I was like, what do you call it when you're awake, but you can't move, but you're still asleep? It was just like,
you know what I mean? No? Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, and so then I found out that like the word nightmare is actually referring to that phenomenon, because it's a mare is like it's a different meaning from like horse, it's like the thing that squats on your chest in the night, basically.
Oh, wow.
Because a lot of people that have that feel like something's compressing them.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then a bunch of other like stories, and this was in the documentary that I saw, and I think I've mentioned it before. They call the presence that they see, they call it the Hat Man. It looks like a tall person with a tall hat on, which I
Has
never saw.
anyone seen Haunting, or what is it? Haunting at Hill House? No.
Oh, well,
Was it the first season? What was it called?
Yeah, the Haunting at Hill House.
Oh, okay. Anyway, one of the ghosts is a tall man with a tall
You're right.
hat. Yeah. He's one of the creepiest ghosts I've ever seen in a movie. Yeah.
That must be where, I mean, they must be drawing from that.
Yeah, I had no
story.
idea. Wow.
But thankfully, I still get it every once in a while, but I don't ever experience like another entity or anything.
Yeah, your friend watching from the closet and quickly joining you in bed, I guess.
Oh, that's terrible. No, in fact, because I did research on it, I saw what other people were doing to like get themselves out of it, and it was like to focus on rolling out of bed, which like I just did like by accident, you know?
Yeah.
So that they'll like do something that will eventually wake themselves up or make themselves move.
Yeah.
And so I would do that, and then I kind of learned, this sounds weird, but I kind of learned like to control it a little bit. So
I would like kind of go with it.
Yeah, just go with the flow, like a lucid dream, basically.
Yeah.
So you're like, I'm not gonna be scared of this, but if I can like roll over and fly, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, sure. Look, now we're flying. What's next? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I've had some other weird instances, but it's all been, tame. Not like that. I never felt like felt like that was happening.
So,
but anyway, it was a very creepy time for me. Like I said, I was really isolated and stressed out, and didn't really. I don't know. I didn't know how to talk to somebody about that, or I didn't have anybody that I felt comfortable. Like, hey, especially because at the time I really didn't know what it was, and I didn't know that other people had it. So I was like,
it's a crazy thing. It really is. I mean, luckily other people do experience it, but if you don't know that, you just think it's a crazy thing.
Exactly.
End of story.
Right. Oh, well, so if people are interested in this kind of thing, then I was telling you, there's a Reddit thread called No Sleep.
Oh, yes.
And it'll keep you from sleeping for sure. Like, it's just people's creepy stories and, things that unexplained things, you know?
Yeah. I'm going to check it out. Tomorrow's Saturday. I don't need to sleep.
I'll just sit up all night and scare myself to death.
Scare myself, yeah.
Well, actually, there was another thing. This is not, this is just sort of uncanny. It was a little bit weird because I wasn't necessarily scared by it in a supernatural sense, but in a different sense. So when I lived in Coffin Hall, they had put up signs saying, don't puncture the walls because there's asbestos. So, of course, that's wonderful.
Great.
And yeah. So you couldn't like use nails and stuff. You had to tack things up with, sticky tack or whatever. And it was an old building. Like I said, it was torn down the year after I lived there. But I had a roommate, and she and I like kept getting sick. And just getting like terrible coughs and just, like abnormal, just like coughing all the time.
Yes.
And one day, I don't remember why, but she had this big batik cloth thing she had hanging by her bed, and took it down, I don't know, to clean it or something. And she took that thing down, and the wall behind it was completely deteriorated. And it was just a hole. And on the other side of that,
it's just been floating around.
Yeah.
Oh no.
On the other side of that, and like a creepy wall with like dripping like a hole in it, like we
Yeah.
pretty much freaked out. And so on the other side of that wall had been like a storage closet
Uh,
that had a leak in it, and like it's in the sink in there.
uh-huh.
And so it had been leaking in there for at least as long as we probably lived there,
Okay.
until it just rotted the whole wall out.
Oh,
But she happened to have something over it, so we didn't know about it until just,
wow.
yeah.
Until you were hacking your lungs up.
Yeah.
How crazy.
Yeah. That was a weird day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You never want to
Yeah.
see anything but like a fresh wall
Yeah.
behind anything that you
No,
take off the wall. Like,
exactly.
you want that to be intact,
That's right. Yes. This isn't an escape from prison story.
She was in the night. She was tunneling her way out of the
That's
room.
right. Out of college. She hated it there. Oh, wow.
Well, do you have any others that you want to mention before we
well,
wrap up with some
nothing, again,
recommendations?
nothing personal, but I watched, there's a series on Netflix called Surviving Death. And I didn't
Oh,
watch
right.
all of the episodes because I didn't really want to go there in my brain with some of them. But this one, the last episode, I think they're at 4. So the last one is about this other phenomenon about it's children who refer to past lives. And it sounds totally insane, and it is insane. And, when I watch things like that, I spend the whole time, trying to come up with any logical explanation, even if it's kind of a stretch. I'm like, well, it could have happened. It could happen. But some of them are just, I don't know how to explain some of them. And I think that's what's so weird.
Yeah.
I was telling you, my fiance, he's going to school for engineering. He's a science guy, not a ghost guy, not a ghost believer. And I'm not saying that I'm like a believer, but I'm open-minded, and I know there are a lot of things that we don't understand. So,
Yeah.
anyway, even he doesn't know how to explain this, and it's really insane. I mean, kids like 3-year-olds who know, names of family members and or parts of an airplane that like there's no way a child could know. I mean, and I'm saying if you wanted to try to make sense of it, I was telling you to, there was one where a kid was talking about some random person from a long time ago, just an everyday nobody, not a famous person or anything. And this kid starts talking about their family, their old family, I guess. And they finally figured out the name of the person that this kid was talking about, and they weren't able to find information on, this obscure random person anywhere obvious. I think they ended up finding old papers in like a basement somewhere. It wasn't like this was just in any information that you could find on the internet kind of thing. So I'm over here like, well, maybe the parents are totally crazy and learned everything about this obscure person from the past and then taught their 3-year-old all about it. And this child, it's just crazy. So if you want to be weirded out and give yourself something crazy to think about, watch that last episode on the Surviving Death series on Netflix.
Yeah. I know I'm going to end up watching it because I'm, a glutton for punishment that way.
Right.
It did remind me because I kept my nephew when he was a toddler quite a bit, and he would say some very strange things to me that would really set my, just really give me the chills.
Yeah.
And in fact, one time he like was pointing out there was like a circle drive in front of the house, and then a dirt road that led up to it. It was lived out again in the country, and there was a fence where there had been a cattle guard.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a cattle guard is, right?
Yes.
Like
yes.
yeah. we're country girl too. And so, but it was sort of out away from the house, but visible from the, like windows from the front window.
Right. Okay.
And so, he kept pointing out there and referring to him. And I was like, who are you talking about? Like, I'm looking around and thinking, like, maybe he's talking about his grandfather or somebody who lived out there.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, the man by the fence out there. And I looked and there was nobody there. And I was like, can you please explain to me what you're being?
Tell me everything that you see.
Yes,
who is this?
All the detail. Like? I need every detail. And that was the thing about this little kid, this little punk. He would then clam up. He wouldn't say anything else. I mean, he was very small. Like, he was a toddler.
Yeah,
but I was
so
like,
you can't force that out of a toddler.
Yeah, shake him and be like, tell me who you see.
What was it?
Like, can you describe him? No.
Yeah, oh
just
my goodness.
The guy by the fence,
Yeah, no, because that's another thing I've heard about is, kids and just kind of like animals, the way we've talked about how animals can sense weird stuff. Kids, I've heard, stories about kids also seeing things that adults can't see.
Well, and that's, I think, the creepiest thing about that, like, just with animals, is you're like, what is it?
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't be creeped out if they could just explain.
Yes.
Oh, I'm just remembering the time I saw a man standing there. Like, but instead they're like, that guy right there.
Yes.
And same with animals. Like, can I shake you out of this and you can just tell me, like, what is it that you're seeing or hearing?
Right. Oh no.
Well, the last thing that I'll mention that was unexplainable is that, and this is a recent one because it happened since I lived here in Nacogdoches. Was I walked out of my apartment and I lived in a building where there are only 3 other apartments.
I know the story.
And the hallway, was inside, and nobody else except my 3 neighbors even really know our neighbors and people who we invited there. Right. Nobody even knew that it was there. It was over another building, 3 stories. And so I walk out of my apartment one day and just happened to notice that there's black or like really dark, smudgy handprints on the wall, on the hall wall directly across from my door. And so I'm like, well, that's weird. And I'm looking at it and looking back at my door and kind of like trying to imagine, what the scenario is, why this would happen. And the way that they were situated is like palms against the wall with the fingers like pointed toward the floor.
Yes.
So like and didn't you say they were against the wall?
And didn't you say they were like lower down on the wall too?
Yeah, just like a foot or 2 above the floor.
Yeah.
And so I go and I kind of like position myself trying to like see, okay, and the only like position that you could be in to do that is if you're sitting on the floor directly across from my front door.
Yep.
And facing it, facing that door. And I was like, okay. And this was like first thing in the morning. It hadn't been there the night before.
Oh, that's the worst part. Nobody had any business putting their hands or any other part of their body in that hallway next to your apartment.
And why were they so filthy?
That is so true.
They were just like big black handprints.
Somebody digging in a ditch and then sneaking into apartment buildings. And that's so creepy. That is creepy.
It really was. And anyway, I have a couple of theories about it. I'm not going to get into because anyway,
you guys can come up with your own theories.
Yes. And if one of you is the perpetrator,
dirty-handed person,
or like, what is that? Like in the Unsolved Mysteries, if you have any information leading to
if you see
the arrest of this dirty hand person.
I like the idea of, going around town, keeping an eye out on people's hands, looking for really dirty hands.
And then what are you going to do?
I know. Like, hey,
you
size them up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, yeah, that was very odd. But I will wrap up. I will say that aside from all of this stuff, which did take up a not small amount of my time in the past couple days, I have been reading, or I reread for another time, House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros.
Yes.
Which, in fact, I listened to it and I read it because that's going to be our next big read.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, this year in October. So we're going to have copies like we usually do starting in the summer. And it's a great book. It's like a coming of age story. She wrote it in the mid 80s. And it's about a young girl who is dreams of having a house of her own. And then it's told in like a series of very short chapters about sort of her reflections on the life that she lives as a Hispanic young woman in Chicago. And anyway, so we're really excited about it. So that's been sort of the other thing I'm spending time on. And I read a book of poetry called Dearly by Margaret Atwood, who's you know the writer of The Handmaid's Tale. So she's been getting a lot of press these days.
Great.
But really good collection of poetry. And the other thing I've been doing is doing some genealogy research.
That's cool.
My dad has always wanted to know about his history because the Hicks line is sort of it ends. His great-great-grandfather was an orphan, and so that was they just never could penetrate back far enough or beyond him to find any more information about it.
Right.
And so there's Henry Louis Gates Jr. has a show called Finding Your Roots, and he's also written a bunch of really brilliant stuff. But so he's really cool dude. But Finding Your Roots kind of inspired me to get back and doing some of this genealogy searching. And so I had a few years back done like DNA test and like went to ancestry.com to see if that helped shed some light on some of that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, and I have made some headway, and a lot of that is since the I think just since more and more people are putting their data into Ancestry, there's more information. And so I was able to go back to that great-great-grandfather's father, who I can't remember which kind of document it was, but it was describing like where he was born, and it said on the sea. So he wasn't actually, he was born on the sea on the trip from Ireland to America in 1793.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so I'm really finding that to be like a lot of fun when I want to
that's so exciting. It is.
Yeah. And just kind of escape into history a little bit. And it's a lot, there's a lot to, like, you really have to immerse yourself in it to make it make any sense, it's not something you can kind of dabble in.
Sure.
So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. My sister has been kind of doing some of that research over the course of the last year. And I don't know, I think we need to officially do, send away for, what are the different kits and stuff called? There's Ancestry and
Ancestry, 23andMe.
Yes, that's the other one I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So I think we do need to do that.
It was unexpected, and I mean, I'm not going to go into details about it, but it told a completely different story from what my family's story had been.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I think we should probably wrap up, or we're going to have another epic episode.
I know. We just have so much to say.
Yes, but we still want to hear from anybody who has other creepy stories you want to tell us, good books that you're reading, anything like that. especially now because, we are open, but we're not seeing everybody like we normally do.
Right.
So, communicate with us through all of these different forms that we have.
Yes. Take advantage of modern times.
Exactly. And enjoy a nice long weekend. And we will talk to you again next week.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. Afraid you missed one of our scintillating selections? Check out wakelet.com and you'll find a collection of all of the titles that we have mentioned on our podcast.